He was the cowboy who refused every woman in the county, until one stormy night, she asked the question that changed his life forever. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Let's get started. The wind never stopped howling across the dry plains of Dakota Ridge, a lonely place where even the sun seemed to squint through dust instead of shining. The county was small, stitched together by wooden fences, saloons, and the smell of tobacco. And somewhere between the canyons and the old Miller Ranch, lived a man the townsfolk whispered about like a ghost, Eli Granger. Eli was the cowboy who refused every woman in the county. They said he'd turned down daughters of ranchers, widows, even the preacher's niece, all with that same quiet stare, the kind that made a person feel seen and dismissed in the same heartbeat. No one knew why. Some said he was married once and she'd died in the fire that burned half of Silver Creek. Others swore he just didn't have a heart to give. But truth is, Eli wasn't heartless. He was haunted. Every night, he'd ride out alone beneath the cold stars, stopping at the same ridge where an old oak stood burned and twisted. He'd sit there in silence, boots covered in dust, and watch the valley lights fade. Sometimes he'd talk to no one, whispering something like a prayer. "You were right, Anna," he'd say. "Winter always comes." The winter she died was the winter he buried his soul. By the time the next spring came, Eli's name was a legend. Women stopped trying to win him, men stopped trying to befriend him. He worked cattle for hire, fixed fences, drank little, spoke less. Even the sheriff said once, "That man's livin' proof you can breathe without livin'." Then came the day she arrived. Her name was Clara Wynne, though she didn't tell anyone at first. She rode into town on a gray mare with one saddlebag and a gun that looked too heavy for her hand. Nobody noticed her much, just another traveler passing through. Until she walked into Carson's saloon and ordered a whiskey, straight. That's when Eli noticed her. He was sitting by the window, hat low, nursing a glass he hadn't touched in an hour. He looked up once, and in that one glance, something shifted. Her eyes met his, calm as a still river, sharp as a knife's edge. She didn't smile. She didn't look away. "Evenin'," she said. He nodded once. "Evenin'. You always this friendly." "I'm friendly enough. Could have fooled me." The room chuckled softly. Nobody ever talked to Eli like that, not since the fire. But Clara wasn't like the others. She didn't chase gossip or gold. There was something quiet but dangerous in her tone, something that dared him to speak, and Eli didn't know why, but he wanted to. They didn't talk long that night, but she left a mark deeper than he cared to admit. By the next morning, the gossip had started. The women in town whispered, "Who's she?" And, "What's she want with Eli Granger?" But nobody had answers, not even Eli. She showed up again 2 days later, this time at his ranch gate. "You followin' me?" Eli asked, wiping the dust off his gloves. "I'm lookin' for work," she said. "Work? Got 2 hands, a back that don't break, and I can ride better than half the men in town." He stared at her, jaw tight. "This ain't work for a lady." She smiled, slow and sure. "Good thing I ain't one." He wanted to send her away. Should've. But something in her tone, the kind of steel you hear only in someone who's lost more than they admit, stopped him. So he let her stay. The days turned colder. Clara worked hard, said little, and never once complained. She fixed fences, carried feed, and kept to herself. But at night, she'd sit by the fire, staring into the flames with that same faraway look Eli recognized too well, the look of someone who's been burned before. One evening, when the wind was biting through the cracks, Eli asked, "What brought you out here?" "Winter," she said simply. "Winter. It kills the weak. I aim not to be one of 'em." He didn't ask again, but her words followed him like an echo. Days passed. Snow started falling. The ranch grew quiet under white skies. Then one night, after a long day of driving cattle, Eli came back to find Clara gone. Her saddle was missing. So was his rifle. He cursed under his breath and rode out into the storm. The wind cut through him like glass. Hours later, he found her, standing in front of the old oak on the ridge, the one blackened by fire. "Why here?" he shouted over the wind. She turned, her coat whipping. "Because this is where she died, ain't it?" Eli froze. His hands tightened on the reins. "How'd you know that?" "I asked around," she said softly. "You don't talk, but others do. They said your wife died here trying to save the horses." He dismounted slowly, boots crunching through snow. That ain't something strangers should ask about. I'm no stranger anymore. For the first time in years, he felt the old ache rise in his chest, the one he'd buried with Anna's memory. He turned to walk away, but Clara's voice stopped him. You think you're the only one who lost something, she said. He looked back. She was crying, not loud, just quiet tears that froze on her cheeks. My husband died in a mining shaft 3 winters ago. The company said it was his fault. I didn't even get to bury him. The wind went still. The silence between them felt heavier than the storm. Why tell me? He asked. Because I see it in you, she said. That same hole I wake up with every morning. You think if you keep working, keep moving, you'll outrun it. But you won't. He didn't answer. Couldn't. She stepped closer. Tell me, Eli, she whispered, you want a wife, or just another winter alone? The question hit him harder than a bullet. He stared at her, breath shaking, and for the first time in a long while, the cold didn't feel so sharp. But he couldn't speak. Not yet. When he looked again, she'd turned away, walking down the ridge alone. He didn't follow. For days, they barely spoke. The storm worsened, food ran short, and one night the roof nearly gave in from the snow. Still, Clara stayed. She patched leaks, chopped wood, and hummed old tunes under her breath. Sometimes Eli caught himself listening, remembering what it felt like to hear laughter in his home. Then came the night the wolves came. A pack, lean and starving, driven down from the hills by hunger. The horses went wild, the dogs barked, and Clara was first to grab the rifle. By the time Eli reached the barn, she was already firing into the dark. He saw her standing there, fearless, fierce, and something inside him broke free. He fought beside her, and when the last wolf fell, silence filled the world again. Clara was breathing hard, snow on her lashes, blood on her sleeve, not hers. You hurt? He asked. She shook her head. Not yet. He almost smiled. Almost. That night, he couldn't sleep. He went out to the porch, staring at the sky. She joined him, wrapped in his old blanket. For a long while, they said nothing. Then she asked, you ever think about leaving this place? Every day. Why don't you? Because she's buried here. She nodded. Then maybe she's waiting for you to live again. He turned to her, eyes glinting with the firelight. You sure talk like someone who believes in ghosts. Maybe I am one, she said softly. He laughed, a sound so raw it startled even him. After that night, something changed. They worked side by side through the rest of winter, closer each day. Sometimes he'd catch her looking at him like she was trying to solve a riddle. Sometimes he'd look away too quick, afraid of the answer. Then spring came. The snow melted. The fields turned green again. Clara packed her bag one morning without saying much. You leavin'? He asked quietly. I reckon. Where to? Don't know yet. South, maybe. He wanted to tell her to stay. Wanted to say the words he'd held back for months. But pride, or fear, kept his tongue tied. So she mounted her horse, gave him one last look, and said, if you ever figure out what you want, you'll know where to find me. Then she rode off. Weeks passed. The ranch felt emptier than ever. Eli worked, slept, and tried not to think about her. But every night, that question came back, you want a wife or just another winter alone? By the time summer came, he'd had enough. He saddled his horse, left before sunrise, and rode south. Didn't tell nobody, didn't pack much. Just rode. For 3 days, he searched every small town till he saw that gray mare tied outside a blacksmith's barn. Clara was inside, helping a young boy shoe a horse. When she saw Eli in the doorway, she froze, then smiled. Didn't think you'd come. He took off his hat, looked at her straight. I figured it out. Yeah, she said. And what's that? He stepped closer, eyes steady. Winter's long enough without making it lonelier. She stared at him for a second, then laughed, that same sharp, beautiful laugh he hadn't heard in months. You really don't know how to talk like a normal man, do you? Nope. Good, she said. I hate normal. He reached out, hand rough and trembling, and she took it. No vows, no big words, just that touch, small and real. They rode back together that same evening. Years later, folks in Dakota Ridge still told stories about Eli Granger, the cowboy who turned down every woman in the county until one asked him if he wanted a wife or just a winter alone. And when the firelight hit his face at night, and Clara leaned her head on his shoulder, he'd smile and whisper, "Guess I picked right." The wind still howled through the plains, but the house wasn't silent anymore. And for the first time since that burning winter long ago, Eli Granger wasn't alone.